His new wife smiled at the party, until a billionaire walked in and kissed his black ex right in front of them. The rooftop was glowing the way Atlanta only does in early summer, soft gold on glass, a warm breeze drifting through designer dresses and freshly pressed suits. A jazz trio played near the balcony, their sound weaving through the gentle hum of high society conversation. Bianca stood near the marble bar, fingers resting lightly on the stem of her champagne flute. She looked calm on the outside, but something inside her shifted without warning, as if a small thread had been tugged loose. Her eyes drifted across the crowd and landed on Marcus. He was laughing. His new wife was laughing too. Nothing dramatic, nothing worth noting to anyone else, but Bianca felt a strange heaviness settle in her chest, quiet, steady, undeniable. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't longing. It was recognition. The way Marcus's wife tilted her head while she smiled, Bianca had done that, back when she used to swallow her feelings and pretend everything was fine. The realization hit her like someone had pressed a memory against her heart. A tiny detail, so small and human that nobody else would have noticed. Her breath caught before she could stop it. She hadn't expected to feel anything tonight. Definitely not this. The DJ shifted from jazz to an R&B classic that always felt like home, the kind played at neighborhood cookouts, block parties, and family reunions. Normally that kind of sound wrapped her in comfort, but tonight it felt distant, like she was hearing it from another room. Her vision blurred for a moment. Just one heartbeat, just long enough for an old ache to surface, one she thought she'd buried after leaving Marcus behind. She blinked hard and took another sip. Across the room, as if pulled by the same invisible thread, Marcus looked at her. Just for a second. No smile, no greeting. Instead, something passed over his face, something quick and sharp, like regret trying to hide behind politeness. His wife didn't notice, but Bianca did. Her fingers tightened around the flute. She couldn't explain it, but the look in his eyes felt like a warning. A quiet one, the kind that doesn't come with words, only a sudden weight in your chest. Before the moment could settle, the party shifted. A soft chime echoed through the rooftop. The elevator. Several heads turned. Conversations paused. Even the sax player held a note a bit longer, as if waiting. The doors slid open. Donald stepped out, tailored midnight suit, jaw set like he'd made a decision long before he arrived. Everywhere he went, people whispered, Atlanta's tech world billionaire, always traveling, always photographed, rarely predictable. But tonight he didn't offer handshakes. He didn't nod at the hosts. He didn't greet Marcus. He walked straight toward Bianca. Every step felt deliberate. Bianca's pulse stumbled. She hadn't seen him in months. She hadn't expected him here. She hadn't even known he was back in the city. He reached her without slowing down, lifted a hand, and gently cupped her face. The rooftop went silent. Donald pulled her in and kissed her, full, certain, unhurried. Right in the center of the party. Someone gasped. A glass clinked against the floor. Marcus's wife lowered her drink with a stiff, unreadable expression. Marcus himself went completely still, like someone had pressed pause on his entire body. Bianca didn't move. Couldn't. Everything inside her cracked open at once. Confusion, memory, heat, and a punch of disbelief all tangled together. Donald finally pulled back, just slightly, enough for their breaths to meet. His eyes held hers with a seriousness that made her chest tighten. He leaned in close. He whispered something only she could hear, but the guests didn't hear it. Not yet. Her lips parted in shock. The rooftop waited. And the story began. Before we go further, if you've ever walked into a room and felt a truth before you understood it, just hit the like button. It helps these stories reach someone who might need them. Welcome to Mr. Graham's Stories, where real stories meet real-life lessons. Every video is crafted to inspire, challenge, and stay with you long after it ends. If you believe in growth, second chances, and meaningful storytelling, you're home. Subscribe, like the video, and tell us the time and where you're watching from. For a long second, the rooftop seemed suspended, like the city itself had paused to catch its breath. Bianca wasn't sure if the warmth on her cheeks came from the Atlanta night or from the kiss she was still trying to process. The world around her felt strangely muted, as if someone had turned the volume down on everything except the beating of her own heart. Donald's hand lingered along her jaw, his thumb brushing once, soft, almost uncertain. That single touch startled her more than the kiss. Donald wasn't known for uncertainty. He was known for stepping into a room like the world was negotiating with him. But tonight, standing inches from her, he looked nothing like the untouchable man Atlanta talked about. He looked relieved. Bianca swallowed hard. Around them, whispers spread through the guests in small, scattered waves. Some people stared openly. Others looked away quickly, pretending they hadn't seen anything. Atlanta society loved a scandal, but they enjoyed pretending they weren't watching it even more. Bianca became painfully aware of Marcus standing just a few yards away. His posture had changed completely. Moments earlier he'd been relaxed, laughing beside his new wife. Now his expression was tight, jaw clenched, shoulders squared, eyes fixed on Bianca and Donald. His new wife touched his arm, confused, but Marcus didn't look at her. Bianca forced herself to look away from him. She didn't owe Marcus anything, not explanations, not understanding, not a single reaction. But the look she'd seen in his eyes before the kiss replayed in her mind like a warning she couldn't decode. Donald finally lowered his hand, though his presence didn't ease. If anything, he stood closer than he needed to, as if he expected something or someone to interrupt. Bianca breathed in slowly, and her voice came out quieter than she expected. "Donald, what are you doing here?" It wasn't sharp. It wasn't angry. It was the voice of someone whose balance had been knocked out of her hands and left somewhere on the floor. Donald's eyes scanned her face carefully, searching for something. Permission, maybe, or forgiveness he hadn't even earned yet. "I needed to see you," he said. The simplicity of it unsettled her even more. This rooftop was not the kind of place people needed anything from her. This was an elite gathering filled with expensive perfume, political smiles, and people who measured one another by influence. Donald's presence felt too personal for a night like this, and too intentional. Bianca opened her mouth to speak again, but footsteps approached. "Marcus." She felt his presence before she fully turned toward him. He wasn't rushing, but every step radiated tension, like someone trying to hold a storm inside a suit jacket. His wife trailed a step behind, watching both Bianca and Donald with confusion and a touch of unease. Marcus stopped at a polite distance, though the politeness was only for show. "Bianca," he said quietly, his voice tight at the edges. "Can we talk?" The request was calm, meant to sound controlled. But control wasn't what she heard. She heard urgency. She heard the crack that had formed in his expression earlier, now widening. Donald stepped slightly in front of Bianca, not blocking her, just placing himself in the conversation with a silent, commanding presence. "This isn't the time," Donald said. Marcus's eyes flicked to Donald with something sharp and unspoken. Old rivalry? Old knowledge? Bianca couldn't tell. All she knew was that the air between the three of them felt like stretched wire. Marcus held her gaze again. That same regret flickered, only now it was stronger, unmasked, as if he feared something was slipping too far out of reach. Bianca's breath unsteady, she spoke before either man could escalate. "I'm not doing this in the middle of a party," she said softly. Marcus swallowed, then nodded once. His wife gently touched his arm again, attempting to pull him back toward normalcy. He allowed it, but his eyes didn't leave Bianca until the very last moment. Donald waited until Marcus walked away before turning back to her. "Bianca," he said in a low voice meant only for her. "I meant what I whispered." Her pulse jumped. She still didn't know how to feel about that whisper, or why it made her nervous in a way that had nothing to do with fear. The rooftop began to buzz again as partygoers forced their attention back to music and cocktails, pretending they hadn't just watched a private moment break across the room. Bianca drew a slow breath, steadying herself. "Why now, Donald?" she finally said. "Why tonight?" Donald didn't answer immediately. He looked down at the city lights, exhaled, then lifted his gaze back to her. "Because something changed," he said, "and I didn't want you to hear it from anyone else." Before she could ask what he meant, a server passed behind them, carrying a tray of champagne. The soft clink of glasses felt oddly symbolic, like a reminder that life kept moving even when your world stood still. Bianca stared at Donald, trying to understand the weight behind his words. He offered his hand, not demanding, just gently, silently asking for trust. "Will you walk with me for a moment?" he asked. Bianca hesitated. Her heart didn't. She placed her hand in his. The rooftop kept spinning without them as they stepped away from the spotlight together, into the quieter edge of the terrace where the night air felt clearer. The unanswered question, what Donald whispered, hung between them, waiting for its moment. The terrace felt different from the crowded center of the rooftop, quieter, cooler, almost like a breath Bianca didn't realize she'd been holding. The city stretched out beneath them, windows glowing in patterns that reminded her of long drives home after church events. When her mother would point out the skyline and say, "Baby, the world is bigger than whatever hurt you today," she wished she could hear her mother say that now. Donald released her hand slowly, giving her space to step aside the railing. The night breeze lifted a few strands of her hair, brushing them across her cheek. Donald watched her carefully, not with ownership, not with entitlement, but with something closer to apology. "What you whispered," she said quietly, eyes still on the city. "It didn't sound like something you planned." "I didn't," he admitted. His voice was lower now, stripped of the confidence he usually carried into rooms full of Atlanta elites. "But the moment I saw you, it came out on its own." Bianca turned her head just enough to study him. Donald looked human, not the wealthy powerhouse people whispered about, not the man always surrounded by investors, photographers, or assistants. Just a man standing on a rooftop, unsure of how much of himself to reveal. "You shouldn't have kissed me like that," she said softly. He nodded, slow, honest. "I know. But you did." "Yes." Silence settled between them again. Not the heavy kind, more like a truth waiting to be shaped. Bianca wrapped her arms around herself, not from cold, but from the weight of everything happening in too short a time. "You don't show up to parties like this," she said. "Not the small ones, anyway." "This one wasn't small," he replied. "That's not what I meant." He exhaled, eyes dropping for a moment. His hands slid into his pockets, not to hide, but to ground himself. "You're right," he finally said. "I don't. I came because of you." The admission pressed hard against her chest. "Donald, we haven't spoken in months." "I know. And the last time we did. You walked away," he finished quietly. "Because you needed to, and I respected that." She blinked, surprised by his tone. He wasn't defensive. He wasn't correcting her memory. He was accepting it. Bianca looked back out at the city, her voice softer now. "So why show up tonight? Why make a scene?" He hesitated, just long enough to trouble her. "There's something you're not saying," she whispered. His jaw tightened, not in anger, but in conflict, like he was weighing how much to reveal here on this quiet ledge where the city could almost hear them. "Bianca," he said, "something happened this week. Something I should have told you immediately." Her stomach tightened. He continued, "And when I heard you were coming to this party, I realized I didn't want the story reaching you from someone who'd twist it." "What story?" she asked. Donald stepped closer, not invading her space, just gently bridging the emotional distance between them. "Someone's been starting rumors," he said. "About us, about why we broke up, about what happened after." Her brows tightened. "Why would anyone do that?" "That's what I'm trying to find out," he replied. "But whoever it is, they mentioned your name in circles you shouldn't be dragged into." Bianca felt a chill move through her, not from fear but from the sense that her life had shifted before she even realized it. "You kissed me to stop a rumor?" she asked. He shook his head. "No, I kissed you because I wanted to. But the timing, that was because I wanted people to see where I stood. If your name comes up again, they'll think twice before spreading anything." She stared at him, unsure whether to be angry, grateful, or overwhelmed. Maybe all three. "Donald," she said, "I don't want to be used as a shield." "You weren't. You don't get to decide that." For the first time, Donald's expression cracked, not dramatically, just enough for her to see something vulnerable beneath the surface. "You're right," he said quietly, "but I needed you to know I'm not letting anyone drag you into something you didn't cause." Bianca opened her mouth to reply, but footsteps approached. Slow, hesitant, measured. Marcus. He didn't step onto the terrace, but stood just beyond the doorway, enough for the warm interior light to cast him into clear view. His expression wasn't angry now. It was worried. "Bianca," he said, voice low, "you should know something." Donald straightened instantly. Bianca felt another shift inside her, another tiny break, small but unmistakable. Marcus swallowed hard, eyes locked on hers. "This isn't about the kiss," he said. "It's about why he's really here tonight." Bianca's heart dropped. She turned to Donald. His silence didn't deny Marcus's words. It confirmed them. The unanswered whisper between them suddenly felt heavier than the entire rooftop. Bianca looked at Donald again, really looked. And the truth was written all over his face. There was more he hadn't told her. And whatever it was, he wasn't sure how to say it. The rooftop hadn't recovered from the shock, even though the music had resumed. The saxophone drifted back into the night air, but it no longer carried the carefree energy it had earlier. People were smiling again, but their eyes kept shifting toward Bianca, then toward Donald, then back to Marcus. 3 focal points of tension in a room that usually masked discomfort behind polished glasses and polite greetings. Atlanta's skyline shimmered behind Bianca, as if the city were listening too. The faint scent of lavender from the decorative candles mixed with the sweetness of peach cocktails drifting from a nearby table. A warm breeze slipped through her curls, lifting them gently while her heart continued to stumble between shock and confusion. Donald still stood close, not touching her, but near enough that she could feel the weight of what he'd done. The kiss wasn't soft or tentative, it had been deliberate. It wasn't the kind of moment someone crafted for attention. It felt like a decision that had been brewing inside him long before he walked into this rooftop and changed the tone of the evening. Her cheeks still burned with the imprint of his gesture, and the whispers around them only deepened her confusion. People weren't subtle. A woman in a red gown leaned toward a man in a navy blazer, whispering into his ear. Another couple near the bar exchanged glances, trying to hide their interest behind sips of champagne. A group of white socialites stood near the decorative light column, their expressions ranging from amused to stunned, mentally placing Bianca into a story they would definitely recount tomorrow. Meanwhile, a small cluster of black guests, the ones who knew Bianca through community events, through her family, through church functions, watched with a mix of concern and curiosity. They weren't judging her, they were studying the situation, trying to understand her reaction, feeling protective without stepping into her space. Their expressions carried a silent message. Girl, are you okay? Bianca wished she could answer that question for herself. Her mind replayed everything in pieces. Marcus's wife laughing, the way she tilted her head, that flicker of familiarity, Marcus's regretful glance, her chest tightening, the elevator opening, Donald striding toward her, his hand cupping her face, the kiss, the whispers, the sudden sting of being watched. She pressed her fingers lightly to her lips, as if she needed proof that the moment had actually happened. Her pulse thudded in her ears, making the rest of the rooftop sound fuzzy and distant. Marcus stood with his wife again, though neither of them looked comfortable. His wife attempted a smile, but her eyes darted around the space, unsure how to react to the sudden shift in her husband's attention. Marcus's expression hadn't softened since he approached them on the terrace earlier. If anything, he looked even more troubled. Bianca could hear her grandmother's voice from years ago. Baby, the people who regret losing you don't always regret it in time. Marcus's regret was arriving far too late. Donald cleared his throat lightly, bringing Bianca's attention back to him. Are you all right? He asked. The question irritated her, not because he didn't care, but because he was the reason the entire rooftop was staring. She felt exposed, as if the kiss had stripped away the emotional distance she had worked hard to create. I don't know what I am, she replied honestly. I wasn't expecting any of this. A brief shadow crossed Donald's face. He nodded slowly, accepting her answer. The band shifted into a livelier tune, but the energy of the rooftop didn't quite catch up. People moved, danced, chatted, but every few moments someone's gaze flickered back toward Bianca. A woman she recognized from a black arts nonprofit gave Bianca a soft, concerned nod from across the patio, an acknowledgement of the emotional weight of being on display in a space that wasn't exactly built for vulnerability. Bianca forced a small, steady breath. She could feel the embarrassment crawling up her spine, not because she had feelings for Donald, but because she didn't want anyone reading her emotions like a gossip column. High society gatherings had a way of making personal moments feel like public theater. Donald took a small step closer. If you need a moment, we can step away. Her chest tightened again, not painfully, but in the way one tightens when they've been holding too much inside for too long. I do, she said softly. She lifted her eyes toward the hallway leading to the quieter part of the building. The soft lights and glass doors offered her a path out of the spotlight. She needed air, space, a moment to let the shock settle instead of spinning inside her like loose glass. Donald extended his hand, not forceful, not urgent, simply offering. Bianca hesitated, but only for a breath. Then she placed her hand in his. A warmth spread from her palm up her arm, grounding her in a way she didn't expect. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't nostalgic. It was survival, stepping away before the attention swallowed her whole. As they began to move, the crowd parted subtly, conversations dipping in volume as guests made space for them. Bianca kept her head forward, refusing to meet the curious eyes following their movements. Marcus's gaze burned into her back. His wife's confusion hovered beside him, and Donald remained by her side, silent but steady. When they reached the glass doors, Bianca allowed herself a final glance at the rooftop, at the swirl of luxury, whispered judgments, and the two men whose presence pulled her emotions in directions she didn't have the strength to name yet. Her breath trembled. She needed air, and she needed it now. The moment the glass doors closed behind them, the noise of the rooftop softened to a faint echo, still present, but distant enough that Bianca could finally breathe. The hallway they stepped into was lined with warm light, soft carpeting, and artwork that probably cost more than anything Bianca owned. It was calm, controlled, and nothing like the storm she felt inside her chest. She dropped Donald's hand the moment the door shut, not out of anger, but because her mind was still trying to catch up with the chaos he'd thrown her into. She stepped a few paces away, pressing her back lightly against the wall as she steadied her breathing. Donald stood nearby, watching her with concern he wasn't trying to hide. "I didn't mean to overwhelm you," he said quietly. Bianca let out a short, disbelieving breath. "Donald, you walked into a crowded party and kissed me in front of half of Atlanta. I know. You think that's just overwhelming?" He lowered his eyes, accepting the truth of her tone rather than defending himself. For all his power and ego, Donald always surprised her with his ability to drop the armor when it came to her. She ran a hand through her curls, trying to clear her head. "Why did you really come tonight? And don't tell me it was coincidence." "It wasn't," he said. Bianca lifted her eyes to him again, frustration building beneath her calm exterior. "Then what? Because you didn't do all that just to say hello." Donald drew a slow breath and stepped closer, not too close, but enough that she could see the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept swallowing as if choosing his words carefully. "I came back because I needed to talk to you," he said. "Not in a message, not through someone else. I needed to see you." Bianca crossed her arms. "You could have called. I wasn't sure you'd answer." She didn't respond, because he was right. After months of silence, of trying to heal from the last time their worlds collided, she probably wouldn't have answered. Donald continued, "And I knew Marcus would be here. I didn't want anything said to you before I got the chance to explain myself." Her eyes sharpened. "Explain what?" He hesitated, and that hesitation, more than anything, made her heart tug uneasily. Before he could answer, footsteps approached from the rooftop side of the hallway. Bianca's breath hitched. Marcus. He stepped through the doors, and even though he paused politely, it was clear he wasn't going to pretend everything was fine. "Bianca," he said softly, ignoring Donald at first. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she replied quickly, forcing her voice to stay steady. Marcus nodded, but his eyes searched her face for the truth. His wife wasn't with him this time. She remained on the rooftop, pretending to engage in conversation while subtly watching them through the glass. Marcus turned his attention to Donald, and the politeness faded. "You had no right to do that out there." Donald's posture shifted subtly, shoulders straightening, jaw tightening. But he didn't move toward Marcus. He didn't need to. His presence itself was firm enough. "I don't owe you an explanation," Donald replied. "You do when you pull something like that in front of my wife," Marcus shot back. Donald's expression didn't change. "Your wife wasn't who I kissed." Bianca felt the air thicken between them like heat on pavement. "Stop," she said sharply, stepping between them. "Both of you." Marcus swallowed hard, trying to rein in the emotion climbing up his throat. "Bianca, that wasn't okay. He made a scene involving you." Bianca lifted her chin. "Marcus, whatever happened between us is over. You don't get to be protective now." He blinked at her words, the truth of them hitting him harder than he expected. He lowered his gaze for a moment, then nodded. "You're right," he murmured. "I just—" Before he could finish, his wife appeared behind the glass, her expression tight and unreadable. She didn't come through the doors, but she watched closely, too closely. Something about her stare unsettled Bianca. Not jealousy, not anger, something quieter. Something that didn't fit the image Marcus had painted of their marriage. Marcus glanced back and saw his wife watching. His expression stiffened. "I should go," he said quietly, stepping away. "Bianca, if you need anything, just—" "I'm fine," she repeated. He nodded once more, then returned to the rooftop, his wife stepping aside as he rejoined her. They exchanged a few quiet words before slipping back into the swirl of guests. Bianca let out a shaky breath. Donald waited until Marcus had fully disappeared before speaking again. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't come here to create drama." "You didn't have to kiss me," she replied. "You know what that does. You know who watches. You know how people talk." "I wasn't thinking about them," he said. "I was thinking about you." Bianca shook her head. "Donald, that doesn't make me feel any better." His expression softened, the vulnerability from earlier returning in a way she wasn't prepared for. "I know, and I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a moment." She looked at him, really looked. His shoulders carried pressure she'd never seen on him before. His eyes held something more complex than desire or ego. His voice carried weight he wasn't trying to disguise. "Bianca," he said carefully, "I didn't just come back for you. I came back because something involving you is starting again, and I needed to warn you." Her heart tightened. "Warn me about what?" He opened his mouth to answer, but the glass door opened again. Marcus's wife stepped halfway inside this time, her eyes flicking between both of them with an expression that didn't match the polite mask she wore earlier. Something was off, very off. "I'm sorry," she said, voice even but eyes sharp. "But Bianca, someone at the party is asking about you, and they don't seem friendly." Bianca stiffened. Donald's entire demeanor changed in an instant. Shoulders squared, posture alert, eyes narrowing in calculation. "Who?" Donald asked, his voice low. She hesitated. "I don't know. But they're asking questions about your past, and about your connection to him." She nodded toward Donald. Bianca's breath caught. Donald's jaw tightened, and suddenly everything Donald hadn't told her felt bigger than the kiss, bigger than Marcus's reaction, bigger than this party. Bianca's pulse thudded in her ears. Her evening had just shifted again. If you've ever felt caught between your past and your present, tell us in the comments. Your voice might help someone feel less alone. Bianca hadn't realized how cold her hands had become until she stepped into the warm elevator beside Donald. The doors closed with a soft hum, sealing them in a quiet that felt strange after the noise and tension of the rooftop. She clasped her fingers together, trying to calm the tremor in them. Donald pressed the button for the main level, his jaw tight as if he were holding back more than he was ready to share. The elevator began its descent. Bianca's heartbeat began to slow, just barely, now that the stares, whispers, and unfinished questions of the party were several floors above her. She leaned against the brass rail, letting her breath fall out in a shaky exhale. Donald watched her carefully, not possessively, not proudly, but with the soft concern of someone trying to measure the damage they caused. "Do you want me to call someone for you?" he asked. "A friend? Your brother? A ride?" The mention of her brother made her chest tighten. He would have driven across Atlanta at the slightest hint of trouble, but she shook her head. "No," she murmured. "I just want to go home." Donald nodded once. "I'll take you." Bianca opened her mouth to refuse, but no words came. The truth was, she didn't feel safe going outside alone tonight. Not after what Marcus's wife had said, not after Donald's own warning. Pride and independence were important to her, but fear had a way of reminding people that safety was not a weakness. She nodded. The elevator doors slid open into the quiet lobby. Soft lighting spilled across polished floors, and the concierge offered a polite nod to Donald, clearly recognizing him. Bianca kept her eyes forward, not wanting to invite conversation from anyone else tonight. They walked side by side to the sleek black car waiting at the entrance. Donald opened the door for her, not as a gesture of wealth or etiquette, but something closer to an apology, then rounded the car and got in on the other side. The moment the doors closed, shutting out the city noise, Bianca felt the exhaustion settle deeply in her bones. The car pulled away from the building, smooth and silent. Atlanta glowed outside the window, streetlights reflecting off shop signs, late-night crowds laughing in clusters, traffic lights changing with lazy rhythm. The world was still moving normally, as if her life hadn't shifted in the span of a few hours. She rested her head lightly against the window, the cool glass steadying her. For a while, neither of them spoke. Donald kept his hands on the wheel, eyes focused on the road, posture tense but controlled. His tie was loosened slightly from earlier, giving him a less polished, more human look. The kind she used to see when they spent long evenings talking in quiet corners of the city, those rare nights when he let himself step out of the role everyone expected him to play. "You shouldn't have been blindsided tonight," Donald finally said, his voice low. "That wasn't fair to you." She didn't look away from the window. "You kissed me without warning, in front of my ex and half of Atlanta. So yes, tonight was definitely unfair. Donald swallowed, nodding once. You're right. The honesty in his tone unsettled her more than an argument would have. He cleared his throat. Bianca, can I tell you the part I didn't say upstairs? She turned her head slightly toward him. The part you hesitated on. He nodded. The car rolled smoothly through a quiet street lined with restaurants preparing to close for the night. A couple walked hand in hand on the sidewalk, laughing about something only they understood. The sight made Bianca's chest ache with a loneliness she didn't want to name. Someone is bringing up your name again, Donald said. In places where it can cause real trouble. She frowned. My name? Why? I haven't been involved in anything except work and my family. I know, he said. This isn't about something you did. It's about someone connected to me, and someone who, some time ago, was trying to use you to get to me. Bianca felt her stomach tighten. She faced him fully now. Donald, who would do something like that? He didn't answer right away. That silence, the same one he'd carried on the terrace, made her skin prickle with dread. Donald, she whispered, you can't just drop pieces of this. I need you to be clear. He gripped the steering wheel tighter, knuckles whitening. I'm trying to protect you before anything escalates, before someone twists your name into something it's not. Tonight was supposed to give me a chance to talk before rumors spread. So the kiss was… No, he interrupted softly. The kiss wasn't part of a plan. That was me losing control for a second when I saw you. Bianca's breath caught, not in a romantic way, but in a conflicted, tangled way that made her heart and mind pull in opposite directions. She looked away again, watching the city lights blur past the window. Why didn't you tell me this weeks ago? She asked quietly. I didn't know for sure until recently, he admitted. And I didn't want to drag you into anything unless it became serious. And now it's serious? Donald didn't answer, and that silence was an answer. Bianca turned her face toward the windshield, blinking back the heat pressing behind her eyes. The night felt heavier with every mile. You should have told me, she whispered. I know. For the first time that night, his voice cracked just slightly, barely enough to hear but impossible to miss. The car turned into her neighborhood, the shift from downtown luxury to her quieter, grounded world obvious in the surroundings. Streetlights buzzed softly, and familiar houses lined the road, homes filled with families who knew the value of community, who cooked together, prayed together, who didn't care about billionaire rumors or rooftop scandals. Her world, the one she had built to escape the chaos of people like him. The car slowed to a stop in front of her building. Bianca unbuckled her seatbelt, her fingers trembling again. She reached for the door handle, then paused. Is it over? She asked. Whatever this is it going to stop now that you've come back? Donald looked at her with something raw in his eyes. I don't know, he said, but I promise you, I won't let anything happen to you. Not because of me. Bianca nodded once, overwhelmed and unsure of what to believe. She stepped out of the car. And just as Donald lowered his gaze, his phone lit up on the console beside him. A message. She caught only a glimpse of the notification. It's starting. She knows. Donald quickly flipped the phone face down, hiding the screen. But not fast enough. Bianca saw the way his expression shifted. Tight, alert, afraid. The truth was far from over. The next morning arrived slower than Bianca wanted. A thin line of sunlight slipped through the edge of her curtains, brushing across her cheek and warming her awake. She hadn't slept well. Every time she drifted off, the events of the night resurfaced. Donald's kiss, Marcus's expression, the message he tried to hide, the warning whispered by Marcus's wife. Her mind moved through each moment like pages she couldn't stop turning. Bianca sat up slowly, letting her feet rest on the soft rug she'd bought during a summer street market years ago. It had been a gift to herself during a period when she'd promised to rebuild. Her confidence, her peace, her sense of home. She pressed her palm into the fabric, grounding herself. The city outside her window moved with its usual rhythm, cars passing, neighbors chatting on porches, kids getting ready for school. That normalcy steadied her. This was her world, the grounded, familiar one she built after leaving everything chaotic behind. But as she moved to the kitchen to make tea, her thoughts drifted into memories she hadn't touched in a long time. Donald, their past was not simple, not clean, and not the kind of love story that faded quietly. It held fire, laughter, arguments that lasted too long, apologies that came too late, and moments that felt too fragile to handle. It began years ago, unexpectedly, during the Essence Festival in New Orleans. She could still feel the heat of that week, The thick summer air, the crowd's energy, the electrifying music that blended with the heartbeat of the city. She'd gone with her cousins, expecting a weekend of concerts, food, and culture. She hadn't planned on meeting him. He stood out, not because he looked wealthy, but because he looked curious, like he was trying to understand the space rather than take it over. He'd been invited by investors connected to his tech company, and he wandered into the same outdoor stage area Bianca and her cousins were enjoying. She remembered the moment clearly. He bumped into her while grabbing a drink, spilled a few drops on her sandal, and spent the next 10 minutes apologizing in a flustered manner she never expected from a man like him. "What is a guy like you doing at Essence?" She'd teased. He'd smiled, a real one. "I'm trying to learn what joy looks like." She didn't fall that night, but something inside her opened. Their romance unfolded slowly after that. Not perfect, not smooth, but real. They went to cookouts together, one where her uncle teased Donald mercilessly about not knowing how to properly season anything. Donald took it with grace, laughing along, asking questions, wanting to learn. He came to church with her twice, sitting beside her grandmother, who pretended she didn't like him but kept slipping him extra mints after service. There was one Sunday she remembered most, a block-wide cookout, kids playing tag in the street, old-school music playing out of speakers, women laughing near the grill, men arguing over spades. The kind of gathering where love and culture wrapped around everyone like sunlight. Donald had tried his first plate of real home-cooked food that day. She remembered how he looked at her after tasting her mother's mac and cheese, as if a whole new world had opened for him. "You grew up with all this?" he'd asked. Bianca nodded. "This is normal to us. It feels like home," he whispered. Those words had stayed with her longer than anything else he ever said. But then came the cracks. His world, money, influence, pressure, pulled him into colder rooms. Investors who wanted control, business partners who didn't care about boundaries, news stories that made small rumors explode. And with those came people who didn't like Bianca near him. It started subtle. Comments, questions, suggestions that she didn't fit. He tried to shield her from it, but the strain showed in their conversations. He lied once. Then he hid something else. Not betrayals, just truths he thought he could fix before they reached her. But Bianca had grown up in a family where honesty wasn't optional. No matter how much she loved him, she couldn't keep overlooking the cracks. One night, after a fight that drained the strength from both of them, she said the hardest words she'd ever said. "Love isn't enough if it keeps hurting me." He didn't chase her. He stood still, tears gathering in his eyes. But he let her walk away. And she rebuilt, piece by piece. She grew stronger, more centered. She learned what she wanted and what she refused to tolerate. She stopped romanticizing pain. She began choosing herself, and for the first time, she felt proud of the woman she was becoming. Until last night, until Donald showed up again with a kiss that shook the ground she'd already repaired. Bianca pulled in a breath and wrapped her hands around her tea mug, letting the heat soothe her palms. She whispered to herself, "I can't let him pull me back into confusion." But the truth lingered, stubborn and quiet. She wasn't confused because she still loved him. She was confused because he still had the power to affect her, emotionally, mentally, deeply. She took a slow sip of tea. A memory from the night they broke up surfaced. He had held her wrist gently, as if memorizing the shape of her hand. His voice barely above a whisper. "If you ever need me again, no matter when, I'll come." She hadn't needed him. Not until someone began dragging her name into dangerous conversations. Not until he warned her last night that she was part of something she didn't cause. Not until his silence felt like the only truth he couldn't hide. There was a quiet knock on her door. Bianca froze. Her heartbeat quickened, not from fear, but from a sense that her past wasn't done speaking to her. She set her mug down carefully, walked to the door, and opened it just enough to see who stood on the other side. Marcus. His expression carried an apology he didn't yet know how to say. Bianca kept her hand on the doorframe, her body angled slightly behind it as she took in the sight of Marcus standing on her porch. The early afternoon sunlight hit his face in a way that made every troubled line stand out. His suit jacket was gone, replaced with a plain charcoal shirt. Simple, casual, far more grounded than the polished image he carried at last night's rooftop party. "Bianca," he said softly. She didn't reply. A quiet part of her hoped he had come to apologize for how tense things became the night before. A louder part feared he was here for something else entirely. She stepped back and opened the door only enough for him to enter. Marcus stepped inside cautiously, as if he understood he wasn't entitled to be in her home anymore. He stood in the living room, glancing around at the framed family photos, the scented candles, the plants she kept by the window, pieces of her world he had never really paid attention to when they were together. "Thanks for letting me in," he said, clasping his hands in front of him. Bianca shut the door gently. "I wasn't expecting you." "I know," he exhaled, "but I needed to see you." She walked past him and stood by the kitchen counter, creating distance. "Marcus, if this is about what happened last night—" "It is," he interrupted, "but not in the way you think." His tone made her pause. Marcus shifted uneasily. "Can we talk for a minute?" Bianca nodded once. Not agreement, just permission. He stepped closer, though not too close. His voice lowered, almost cautious. "Bianca, last night felt wrong, all of it. Not because of the kiss, not because of Donald, though that threw me off more than I expected." He let out a slow breath. "It's because I realized something I should have admitted a long time ago." Bianca didn't move, didn't speak. She waited. Marcus swallowed, his eyes dropping to the floor before he forced himself to meet her gaze. "I didn't end things between us the right way. I wasn't honest with myself back then, and I wasn't honest with you either." Bianca's chest tightened slightly, not from emotion, but from remembering the months of confusion he had left her in. He continued, his voice rougher now. "You deserved closure, real closure, not the rushed explanation I gave you, not the half-truths, not the silence afterward." Bianca's brows knit together. "Marcus, we have both moved on. You're married." "I know," he said quickly, "and I'm not here to disrespect that. I owe you the truth." She stiffened at the word. "Truth?" Marcus nodded. "My wife. She wasn't supposed to be in that part of my life yet. The timing of everything, it wasn't clean. I didn't cheat, but I also didn't tell you when she started becoming important." Bianca looked away. The confession hurt, but it wasn't surprising. "I wasn't ready for the kind of love you wanted," Marcus added. "You were steady, grounded, real, and I wasn't man enough to handle that back then." Bianca crossed her arms, bracing herself. "So you're here now to what? Finally close the chapter?" He winced. "That sounds harsher than I meant it, but that's what it is," she said. "You came to wrap up something you left sloppy." He closed his eyes briefly. "Bianca, I came because last night when I saw you with Donald, I realized something important." She raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "That you deserved someone who fought for you," he said. "You always did. And I didn't." Bianca felt a quiet heaviness settle over her. Part of her had wanted this acknowledgement years ago. Part of her didn't need it anymore. She took a breath. "Marcus, I'm not angry. Not anymore. I've healed from what happened between us, and I don't need closure from you. I found it on my own." Marcus nodded, but his eyes flickered with something else, something unsettled. "What is it?" she asked carefully. His jaw tightened. "My wife." A cold ripple slid through Bianca's stomach. "What about her?" Marcus hesitated, then stepped closer. "She's not being honest about why she spoke to you last night." Bianca's pulse quickened. "I knew something was off. She told me she checked on you because she was concerned," Marcus said. "But she was lying. She knew someone was asking questions about you before she ever walked over." Bianca stiffened. "Why didn't she say that directly?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," he said quietly. "She's been different, guarded. The way she watched you last night, it wasn't jealousy. It was something else." Bianca's breath grew shallow. Marcus continued. "After the party, she asked me if you and Donald were ever involved. She wasn't asking out of curiosity. It felt like she already knew something." Bianca's mind raced back to the message Donald hid in the car. "It's starting. She knows." "What exactly did she say?" Bianca asked. Marcus rubbed his forehead. "She asked if you ever posed a problem." Her word, not mine. When I asked what she meant, she said Donald tends to revisit old connections when pressure builds. Bianca's stomach dropped. "Did you tell her anything?" "No," Marcus said firmly. "None of your business is hers to handle." "But Bianca, I think she knows more about whatever Donald is caught up in." Bianca pressed her fingers to the edge of the counter. "Marcus, this isn't your marriage issue to bring to me." Marcus nodded, shame flickering across his face. "I know. I shouldn't be dragging you into this, but you deserve to know that something around you is shifting and not in a safe way." Silence settled between them. Bianca's tea mug still sat on the counter, half finished, steam long gone. She stared at it, steadying her breath. "Marcus," she said softly, "I'm not going backward. I don't want to dig up old wounds. Whatever regrets you have, they're yours to work through." He nodded slowly. "I respect that. But," she continued, "if your wife is involved in something that affects me, I need the truth, not apologies." Marcus swallowed. "I'll find out what she knows. But Bianca, be careful. Something isn't adding up." Bianca met his gaze. "I already know." Marcus stepped back toward the door. He paused before leaving. "For whatever it's worth," he said quietly, "losing you taught me a lesson I wasn't ready for. And I hope whoever you're connected to now knows not to take you for granted." Bianca didn't respond. He nodded once more, then stepped outside, closing the door gently behind him. As soon as he was gone, the silence in her home felt heavier. Her heart beat faster. Her past was trying to talk to her. Her present was hiding truths from her, and her future was inching closer with a warning attached. She whispered aloud, "Why does this feel like the beginning of something I'm not ready for?" Tell us in the comments, do you believe closure with an ex is necessary, or is peace something you find on your own? Bianca spent the next hour pacing her living room, the conversation with Marcus looping through her mind like a warning she couldn't unhear. The sunlight shifted across her floor, creeping slowly toward afternoon as she waited for her thoughts to settle. They didn't. Instead, her anxiety sharpened with every minute. Marcus's wife's strange interest, Donald's tense silence, the message he tried to hide. Finally, she grabbed her phone. There was only one person who owed her answers. Before she could type a single word, her phone buzzed in her hand. Donald. Calling. Her pulse jumped. She hesitated, only for a breath, then answered. "Bianca?" His voice was low, calmer than she felt he deserved. She drew in a shaky breath. "We need to talk." "I know," he said. "I'm downstairs." Her stomach flipped. She moved to the window instinctively. Sure enough, Donald's car was parked by the curb. He stood outside it, hands in his pockets, head tilted slightly upward, as if he expected her to look down. Bianca set the phone aside, grabbed her keys, and stepped outside. The afternoon breeze brushed against her skin as she approached him. Donald looked tired, not physically, but in the way someone looked when carrying too many truths at once. "Thanks for coming out," he said gently. "I didn't have much of a choice," she replied. "We can't keep circling the same half answers." He nodded, accepting that. "Let's sit," he said, motioning toward a small bench near the walkway. Bianca sat first, hands folded tightly. Donald took the spot beside her, leaving just enough distance to show respect without retreating emotionally. For a moment, neither spoke. Finally, Bianca broke the silence. "Why did you really kiss me last night? And don't tell me it was impulse, or nostalgia, or anything soft. I want the truth." Donald's jaw tightened, not from anger, but from bracing himself. "I'm in trouble," he said quietly. Bianca's breath caught. "What kind of trouble?" "Not criminal," he reassured quickly, "but corporate, strategic, dangerous in the wrong hands." She stared at him. "And what does that have to do with me?" "That's the part I should have explained the moment I saw you," he admitted. Bianca's heart began to pound faster. Donald ran a hand slowly over his face, as if deciding where to start. "Months ago," he said, "someone started pushing to take over a large part of my company. Not publicly, behind closed doors, to weaken me before making a move." Bianca frowned. "But what does that have to do with me?" Donald glanced at her, guilt flickering in his eyes. "Because one of the strategies they used was trying to paint you as a liability I was hiding." She froze. "Me? Why?" "Because you and I had a history," he said softly. "Because you weren't from the world they thought I should be associated with. Because they wanted to create a story where you were a distraction, someone I kept secret for reasons they could twist." Bianca felt heat rush into her chest. Not anger yet, but shock. "Why would anyone care about me?" she whispered. "Because I cared about you," Donald said, "and they could use that." Bianca pressed her fingers against her lips. "Who told them anything about me?" "That's what I've been trying to find out," he replied. "But recently, someone started circulating an old manipulated rumor that you had influence over some of my business decisions, that you were connected to one of my competitors, that you could be weaponized." Bianca's stomach churned. "That's ridiculous." "I know," he said quickly. "None of it is true. But truth doesn't matter when people want leverage." Bianca inhaled sharply. "So, you kissed me in front of everyone to What? Claim me? No, he said firmly. To reclaim the narrative. She blinked. Meaning, if someone wants to use your name to attack me, they can't portray you as a secret, or a weakness, or a rumor. The moment I kissed you in front of Atlanta's upper circle, they had to rethink their angle. You weren't hidden. You weren't something whispered about. You were someone I acknowledged publicly. Bianca swallowed, her throat tight. So I was a strategy. Donald flinched. No. Bianca, no. That's not what I'm saying. She pulled her hands into her lap. Then what are you saying? He took a breath. That I panicked. I saw someone at the party who shouldn't have been there. Someone who was connected to the people pushing this agenda. When I realized they were watching you, I reacted. Bianca closed her eyes. You should have told me before doing something like that. I know, he whispered. She opened her eyes again. And the part about protecting me, is that real or is that another angle? His expression softened, not strategic, not controlled, but painfully human. I would never let anyone use your name to hurt you, he said. Not again. Not ever. Bianca's chest tightened. She looked away toward the quiet neighborhood street. Kids rode bicycles. A man watered his lawn. A grandmother sat on her porch reading. Her world remained steady, grounded, safe, but the man beside her carried storms. Donald, she said softly, why didn't you tell me any of this months ago? His voice cracked slightly. Because I was trying to fix it before it touched you. But it already touched me, she whispered. He nodded, guilt heavy in his eyes. That's why I came back. Bianca kept her gaze on the street. There's more you're not telling me. Donald stiffened almost imperceptibly. It was so small that someone who didn't know him might have missed it. But Bianca had loved him once. She caught every shift in his breath. Bianca, he began. She turned to him, eyes unwavering. What aren't you telling me? Donald's lips parted. He inhaled. He looked down, but he didn't speak. The silence between them grew tense, not angry, but charged with something heavy, something unfinished. Bianca leaned forward slightly, her voice firmer now. Donald, tell me the part you're hiding. He swallowed. Hard. His hands tightened on his knees. He lifted his eyes back to her, and the look in them sent a ripple of fear through her chest. It isn't just your name they're using, he said slowly. Bianca's breath hitched. Whose else? Before he could answer, a car slowed at the end of the street. A tinted window lowered. Someone watched them, just for a moment. Then the car sped off. Bianca's skin prickled. Donald stood abruptly, his face tightening with recognition or dread. Bianca, we need to go inside. She rose, heart pounding. Donald, tell me what's going on. He stared at the street, jaw locked. It's worse than I thought, he murmured. And it's not just about us. Bianca felt her world shift beneath her feet. Donald, she whispered, voice trembling. What aren't you telling me? He finally looked at her, but he still didn't answer. Bianca didn't sleep well that night. The image of the tinted car slowing at the end of her street replayed in her mind like a scene she wasn't supposed to witness yet. Donald's stiff posture, his whispered warning, his silence, it all clung to her long after he left. By the time morning arrived, she felt the tension sitting on her shoulders like an extra weight she couldn't shake off. She made coffee and stepped onto her small balcony, hoping fresh air would help her organize her thoughts. The neighborhood was already awake, kids running to catch the school bus, neighbors exchanging greetings, the hum of everyday life grounding her. But even as she tried to breathe deeply, her thoughts circled back to one person, Marcus's wife. Something about her stare last night, sharp, lingering, pointed, had worked its way under Bianca's skin. It wasn't jealousy. It wasn't anger. It was something else entirely. A kind of watchfulness that didn't belong at a party. Bianca replayed the moment she'd first noticed it, the wife standing behind the glass doors, her posture composed but her eyes too focused, too calculating. The way she approached in the hallway, the flatness in her tone when she mentioned someone asking questions about Bianca, the strange tension in her smile. None of it made sense. Bianca sipped her coffee slowly. She had no desire to be connected to this woman in any way. Their only tie was Marcus, and that chapter in Bianca's life had long since closed. But her instincts wouldn't settle. Something wasn't right. Her phone buzzed on the balcony table. A message. I'd like to talk, alone, today. Bianca's stomach tightened. The name on the screen made her grip the mug tighter. Marcus's wife. She stared at the message for several seconds, unsure if she should respond. Her fingers hovered over the screen. Should she ignore it? Should she ask why? Should she block the number? But another message arrived before she could decide. I won't take much of your time. It's important. Bianca exhaled slowly, steadying herself. The woman didn't sound hostile, but urgency wasn't comforting either. Before she replied, she stepped inside and sat on the arm of her couch, grounding her thoughts. This wasn't about Marcus, and it wasn't about the rooftop scandal. This was about whatever she knew. Bianca typed back, "Where?" The woman responded almost instantly, "I'll come to you." Bianca frowned. That made her uneasy. She typed again. "No. Neutral place. Public." A pause. Then, "There's a small cafe on Riverside. Quiet. Meet me at 11. Bianca checked the time. It was 10:18. She had less than an hour to prepare mentally. She dressed simply. Jeans, a soft sweater, minimal makeup. She didn't intend to impress or intimidate anyone today. She just needed to feel like herself. On the drive to the cafe, her pulse remained steady but alert. She kept replaying Donald's expression when the tinted car passed, the tension in his voice, the part he refused to say. Something connected him and this woman. She didn't know how she knew that. She just did. The cafe was tucked into a corner near the river, quiet and filled with morning light. Bianca stepped inside and immediately spotted Marcus's wife near the window. She was already seated, hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched. Her posture was perfect, too perfect. Her smile, when she saw Bianca approach, was polite, but stretched a little too tightly. "Bianca," she said, "thank you for coming." Bianca nodded and sat across from her. "What do you want to talk about?" The woman folded her hands neatly. "I wanted to apologize for how last night unfolded." Bianca studied her. "You didn't do anything to me. You just passed a message I didn't fully explain," she said. Bianca's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" The woman looked out the window briefly, gathering her thoughts before turning back. "I watched you before Donald arrived," she said. "Watched the way you reacted. Watched the way Marcus reacted. I saw things my husband didn't see." Bianca's brows raised. "Such as?" "That you were afraid," she said simply. "Not of Marcus or Donald, of something else entirely." Bianca stiffened. "You don't know me well enough to assume that—" "No," the wife replied calmly, "but I know the look of someone who's being pulled into something they didn't choose." Bianca's pulse sped up. "Is that why you came to the hallway last night?" "No," she said quietly. "I came because someone else was watching you." Bianca froze. The wife continued, "And because that person didn't approach you directly, I wanted to warn you." Bianca leaned in slightly. "Who was watching me?" The wife hesitated, really hesitated, before answering. "I can't say their name. I shouldn't even know they were there. But I recognized them from years ago." Bianca's breath caught. "Years ago where?" A long pause. Then the woman said slowly, "When I worked for someone in Donald's business circle." Bianca's blood ran cold. The pieces began forming shapes she wasn't ready to see. "You worked with someone trying to sabotage him," Bianca whispered. The wife didn't confirm. She didn't deny. Her silence was the answer. Bianca stared at her. "Why are you telling me this now?" The woman's gaze softened. "Because last night, when Donald kissed you, everything changed, publicly. And the people trying to hurt him don't like losing leverage." Bianca's throat tightened. "So I'm leverage?" "Not anymore," the wife said. "But you were." Bianca sat back, her breath uneven. The wife continued, "I need you to be careful. This isn't just business. There are people who take risks when they feel cornered." Bianca felt a chill move up her spine. "And Marcus?" she asked quietly. "Does he know who you used to work for?" The wife's expression hardened at the edges. "No," she said, "and he can't. Not yet." Bianca swallowed. "So what do you want from me?" The woman lifted her cup with steady hands. "Nothing. I just needed you to understand that Donald didn't come back into your life by accident." Bianca's pulse thudded. "You're saying he's in danger?" The woman looked down at the table. Her voice softened. "I'm saying he's not telling you the whole story." Bianca's breath shook. The woman stood slowly, smoothing her blouse. "Be careful," she said again. The people targeting him don't care who gets pulled in. Bianca watched her leave, her thoughts spinning. She sat in silence for a long moment, her coffee growing cold, her heart unsteady. When she finally stepped outside, the wind felt colder than before, almost like a warning brushing past her. Something was wrong, deeply wrong, and she wasn't sure Donald would tell her the truth until the danger touched her directly. Bianca sat in her car for several minutes after leaving the cafe, the engine off, the key still in her hand. The wife's words replayed in her mind like a conversation she hadn't fully absorbed yet. You were leverage. Someone was watching you. He's not telling you the whole story. None of it sat right. The wind pressed softly against the windshield, and the sound of passing traffic hummed faintly in the background. Bianca inhaled deeply and pressed the tips of her fingers to her forehead, trying to navigate the sharp edges of everything the woman had said. Before she could steady her thoughts, her phone vibrated beside her on the passenger seat. She expected a message from Donald, or maybe Marcus, but the name on the screen pulled her breath up short. Marcus's wife. Again. Bianca hesitated before opening the message. I'm sorry if I overwhelmed you. There's more we should talk about. Coffee wasn't the right setting. Can we meet again later today? A second message followed immediately. Just the two of us. Bianca stared at the screen, confusion tightening her chest. Why was this woman suddenly so interested in her? Why did her tone feel strangely warm now, almost casual? And what else did she want to discuss? Bianca typed back slowly. I'm not sure that's a good idea. The reply came quickly. Please, I won't take long. There are things you should know from me directly, not anyone else. Bianca locked her phone and leaned back in her seat. This was too much, too sudden, too strange. But beneath all her caution, one truth pressed harder than fear. This woman knew something. Something connected to Donald. Something connected to the person watching Bianca at the party. Something Donald was too afraid or too guilty to say. Bianca reopened her phone and typed, Where? The answer arrived instantly. A park near the river. I'll send the pin. 4:30. Bianca exhaled and rested her head against the seat. She didn't like this, but she needed answers. Hours passed slowly until 4:30 approached. She made herself a light lunch she barely touched. She watered her plants. She tried reading, but the wife's voice stayed with her. I recognize the person watching you. I used to work for someone connected to Donald. Be careful. When it was time, Bianca drove to the park. The late afternoon sun hung low, casting gentle warmth across the walking trails. A few families picnicked nearby, teenagers tossed a ball between them, and an older couple walked hand in hand along the river. A safe place, or at least, it felt safer than a quiet cafe corner. Bianca spotted Marcus's wife sitting on a bench near the water. She wore a soft gray blouse and dark jeans, simple, intentional, unremarkable. Yet there was something about her posture, the careful way she held herself, that made Bianca's stomach tighten. The woman smiled as Bianca approached, but it was the kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes. Thank you for coming, she said. Bianca sat, but not too close. I hope this won't take long. It won't. The wife clasped her hands neatly in her lap. I just realized the cafe wasn't the right place to talk openly. Bianca raised an eyebrow slowly. You weren't exactly open there either. The woman let out a small, thoughtful breath. Fair enough. Silence passed between them for a moment, broken only by the soft crashing of water against the rocks. Then she shifted in her seat. Bianca, she began, do you know how well I know Donald? Bianca's breath caught. I know you know of him. I know more than that, she said. A lot more. Bianca swallowed. How? The woman looked toward the water as if gathering her thoughts. Years ago, before Marcus and I met, I worked for a consulting firm that handled crisis management for high-profile companies. Donald's name came up often because of the circles he moved in. Bianca's pulse began to race. And you worked directly with him? Not with him, she corrected. With someone who wanted to undermine him. Someone who believed weakening Donald would shift a balance of power. Bianca's skin prickled. The woman continued, I was young, and I didn't know all the details, but I recognized enough faces and enough conversations to understand that Donald had enemies, strategic ones, people who didn't appreciate how fast he climbed or how independent he refused to be. Bianca's voice trembled slightly. And you think one of those people was at the party? I don't think, she said quietly. I know. Bianca's breath shook, but she kept her gaze steady. Why were they watching me? The woman's eyes softened, finally showing something real. Because you're important to him, she said. And people like that target anything important. Bianca looked away, absorbing the weight of the words. The wife continued, Donald has a blind spot when it comes to you. Some see it as weakness, others see it as leverage. And the moment he walked into that party last night, they recognized that leverage. Bianca's heart twisted. So I'm dangerous to him? Not by choice, the woman replied, but by proximity. The wind swept lightly across the river, carrying the scent of water and spring grass. The moment felt fragile, too fragile for the truths hanging between them. After a pause, the wife said, There's something else I didn't mention. Bianca turned back toward her. What is it? The woman pressed her lips together, her eyes flickering briefly, almost nervously. I know something about Donald that he didn't tell you, she said. Something that connects him to the people watching you. Bianca's pulse jumped. Tell me. The woman hesitated. Then she slowly shook her head. It's not my secret to reveal. Bianca's frustration rose sharply. Then why bring it up? To warn you, she said softly. To prepare you. For what? The woman stood from the bench and smoothed her blouse, her face composed once again. For the moment Donald finally decides to tell you the truth. Bianca rose too, heart thudding. What truth? She demanded. What is he hiding? The woman looked at her gently, almost sympathetically. Ask him, she whispered. He won't lie if you ask him directly. Then she turned and walked away, her figure growing smaller against the backdrop of the river. Bianca watched her go, emotions knotted in her chest. Confusion, fear, suspicion, and something she hated to admit. Hope. Hope that Donald would tell her everything. Hope that she wasn't being pulled into something far bigger than she understood. Hope that she could still choose a path that didn't destroy her peace. But as she stood by the river, the sun dipping behind her, she knew one thing for certain. Whatever Donald was hiding was no small secret, and she could no longer pretend she didn't need answers. Bianca drove home from the park with her hands gripping the steering wheel tighter than she intended. The conversation with Marcus's wife replayed in her mind in slow, sharp fragments. Someone was watching you. You were leverage. Donald isn't telling you everything. Ask him directly. Each statement felt heavier than the last. By the time she pulled into her driveway, the sun had dipped behind the houses, leaving a soft evening glow settling across the street. Her neighborhood had always been her place of grounding. Kids riding bikes, someone grilling down the block, neighbors waving from porches. But tonight the comfort felt thin, like the peace was coated with worry she couldn't scrub off. She stepped inside her home, locked the door, and leaned against it for a long moment. Her breath shook. Her heart pressed against her ribs. Every warning, the wife's, Marcus's, Donald's, swirled together into something too big to ignore. She needed answers. Tonight, before she could talk herself out of it, her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Donald, can we talk tonight? A sigh escaped her lips, half relief, half dread. She typed back slowly, Yes. The reply popped up almost instantly. I'm on the way. Bianca tensed. She wasn't ready, not emotionally, not mentally, but maybe that was the point. These conversations weren't going to come when she felt prepared. They were coming when the truth forced its way forward. 15 minutes later, a soft knock sounded at her door. Bianca took one steadying breath, then opened it. Donald stood on her porch, the porch light casting a warm glow across his features. He looked exhausted, not physically, but in that deep internal way that suggested he'd spent the entire day battling something he couldn't fully control. His eyes met hers, and they softened immediately. Bianca. She stepped aside without speaking. He entered quietly, his presence filling the room the way a storm does, subtle at first but undeniable once it settles. He removed his jacket and draped it over the back of a chair. His movements were slower than usual, almost deliberate, as if he was afraid a sudden motion might break the fragile space between them. Bianca stood with her arms folded across her chest, not in anger but in protection. She wasn't ready to give him softness, not until he gave her truth. Did something happen today? Donald asked, noticing her tense posture. She studied him for a moment. Marcus's wife reached out to me again. Donald froze, just for a second, but it was enough. Bianca stepped closer. You know why that scares me? He swallowed. Because she knows too much. No, Bianca corrected softly. Because she looked at me like she expected me to already know the truth. Donald's jaw tightened. She shouldn't have involved you. She already did, Bianca said. Last night, today. And now I'm caught between what she's hinting and what you're refusing to say. Donald looked at the floor, an expression she rarely saw from him. Vulnerability, conflict, the weight of responsibility. Bianca, he said finally, I'm not refusing. I'm trying to choose the right moment. There is no right moment, she said, her voice steady but trembling underneath. There's just now, and I need you to stop protecting me from information that already affects me. Donald ran a hand through his hair, pacing once before stopping in front of her. I didn't tell you everything because I didn't want to drag you into something dangerous. But I am dragged in, she said. The second you kissed me in front of those people, whatever story they're pushing, now involves me. He closed his eyes. I know. She inhaled, choosing her words carefully. Donald, last night wasn't just you trying to reclaim a narrative. Something else happened. Something made you panic. His eyes opened, and the truth flickered there, raw and unshielded. Bianca, he whispered. Someone tried to use your name in a way that could have destroyed you. Bianca's breath caught. How? Donald exhaled slowly. A rumor, a lie. Someone planted information that suggested you had access to private company data because of our past. They were trying to link you to a competitor, something that could not only ruin your reputation, but make you a target. Bianca felt her stomach twist. Me? Why would anyone think I would do something like that? They didn't, Donald said. They never believed it themselves. They were counting on people reacting before checking facts. Bianca pressed her hand to her chest. So that's why you kissed me? To show them I wasn't some hidden scandal? He nodded. If you're visible, if people see you openly connected to me, they can't spin you as some secret threat. You become a public figure in the narrative, not a shadow. Bianca turned away, pacing a few steps. That's not safety, Donald. That's exposure. I know, he said softly behind her, but it was the only move I could make fast enough. She stopped and faced him again. You said someone was watching me at the party. Yes. And Marcus's wife said she recognized them. Donald stiffened again, more sharply this time. Bianca felt her pulse race. Who is this person? And why am I being dragged into something that isn't mine? Donald took a long breath, as if preparing to lift a weight he'd been avoiding for months. Bianca, there's someone who has been trying to weaken my company for years, and before you and I ended things, they tried using you as a point of vulnerability. Bianca's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't want to burden you, he whispered. You were already dealing with so much, and I thought if I ended things, if I stepped back, you'd be safe. But I wasn't safe, she said quietly. I was just uninformed. Donald closed his eyes again. The room fell silent, thick, heavy, trembling between truth and fear. Bianca took a slow step toward him. Donald, if you want me to trust you again, you have to tell me everything you're still hiding. He opened his eyes. They were red at the edges, tired, conflicted, emotional. I'm trying, he said. Bianca, I swear I'm trying. Then tell me the part you're afraid to say. Donald's lips parted. He inhaled. He looked at her with a mixture of apology and desperation. I didn't know she would involve you again, he whispered. Bianca's heart stopped for a beat. Who? She asked. Donald's throat tightened. He didn't answer. Because he couldn't. Before she could press him again, her phone buzzed on the counter. She glanced at the screen. A message. Unknown number. She tapped the notification and froze. It was a photo. A clear photo. Of Donald, standing beside Marcus's wife. Years ago. Smiling. Close. Too close. Bianca's breath shattered. Her fingers went numb. She looked up slowly at Donald, who had gone completely still, his face draining of color. Bianca, he whispered, but she couldn't speak. The truth was no longer a guess. It was right in front of her. The room felt smaller, tighter, as if the walls had shifted closer without touching her. Bianca stared at the photo glowing on her phone screen, her breath lodged somewhere between disbelief and the ache of something deeper, something she wasn't ready to name. Donald stood a few feet away, his chest rising and falling slowly, like he was preparing for a blow he'd been expecting for years. Bianca, he whispered. She couldn't answer. Not yet. Her phone trembled slightly in her grip as she zoomed in on the image, Donald standing beside Marcus's wife, their bodies angled toward each other, old smiles, familiar proximity. The photo didn't scream romance, but it did scream connection. A connection he never mentioned. Bianca's voice finally rose, thin and unsteady. When was this taken? Donald swallowed. Before you and I ever met. She blinked, absorbing that. Where? She asked. He hesitated, but he didn't lie. A corporate event. She was working in the consulting group handling a financial crisis for one of our rivals. Bianca's heart thudded loudly in her ears. So that part was true, she whispered. She really was involved in something tied to you. Yes, he admitted, but not the way you're thinking. Bianca pressed a hand to the edge of her kitchen counter, grounding herself. Her heart was running too fast. Her breath kept hitching. She wasn't angry yet. Anger required clarity. What she felt now was confusion, edged with a kind of hurt she didn't want to claim. Why didn't you ever tell me you knew her? She asked quietly. Donald took a slow step closer but stopped when she flinched back just slightly, an involuntary motion that fractured him. She wasn't part of my story with you, he said. She was part of something I thought was done, something I never wanted to drag into your life. Bianca shook her head, staring at the photo again. But she wasn't done, Donald. She's married to Marcus now. She's watching me. She's involved in whatever is happening to your company. And you never said a word. That's because I didn't want you to feel endangered by my past, he said, his voice cracking. I never imagined she'd step back into the picture, not like this. Bianca let out a shaky breath. Well, she has. He nodded slowly. I know. Silence settled between them like fog, thick, disorienting. Bianca closed her eyes briefly and reached for something familiar, something grounding. Her mother's voice, her grandmother's wisdom, the lessons woven into her childhood, her church, her culture. When your spirit feels unsettled, listen, because truth speaks in whispers before it speaks in thunder. Bianca felt thunder in her chest. She looked at Donald again, not the same way she did at the party, or in the hallway, or in the quiet moments they used to share. She looked at him the way a woman looks at a man who has placed her heart and safety on a scale and refused to show her the weight. Bianca, he said again, softer now. I should have told you years ago. I'm not trying to hide her. I just didn't think she mattered anymore. But she does, and I should have been honest. You should have been honest the moment you saw her last night, Bianca said. Or when she approached me, or when she said someone was watching me, or when she invited me to talk today. His eyes widened slightly. You met with her again? Yes. Donald rubbed his forehead, tension pulling at every angle of his face. Bianca, she's dangerous in ways she doesn't appear to be. You shouldn't meet with her alone. Bianca lifted her chin. Then you should have warned me before she became a problem. He stopped speaking, because he knew she was right. Bianca stepped deeper into her living room, forcing some distance between them. She wasn't trying to shut him out. She was trying to breathe. Her reflective voice rose quietly as she paced. You know what hurts? She said. Not the photo, not the past, not that you knew her once. People have histories. I can handle that. Donald watched her, unmoving. What hurts, she continued, is that everyone around me seems to know more about this danger than I do. Marcus's wife. Marcus. Even the person in that car yesterday. And the only person who should have told me the truth didn't. Donald's shoulders dropped, defeat washing over him. Bianca, I was trying to protect you. From the truth? She asked. Or from your guilt? His breath caught. Bianca grew still. She wasn't yelling, she didn't need to. Her voice held the kind of clarity that came from years of learning how to stand up for herself. I need space, she said calmly. Real space, not to push you away, not to punish you, but to think without you explaining, justifying, or trying to take control of the narrative. Donald stepped forward instinctively, then stopped himself. He pressed his lips together and nodded slowly, painfully. I'll give you space, he said. Bianca lowered her gaze, her voice softer. Donald, I want to believe you. I really do. But trust isn't built on half-truths. He nodded again, his eyes misting. I know. She held the phone up between them. So tell me one thing now. One thing that helps me believe your silence wasn't meant to hurt me. Donald inhaled shakily. I kept it from you because the people involved don't care about boundaries. They don't care about collateral damage. And when I saw your name being pulled into conversations you didn't choose, it terrified me. Her breath softened. They will hurt anyone to get to me, he whispered. Anyone. Bianca's heart twisted. Fear wasn't a language Donald spoke often, but tonight it shaped every word. She lowered the phone slowly. Donald stepped back, his voice trembling. "I'll wait for you to call." Bianca didn't answer. She simply nodded. He picked up his jacket and left quietly, closing the door with a gentleness that made her chest tighten even more. When the silence settled again, Bianca sat on the edge of her couch, the photo still open on her phone screen. Her trust was injured. Her heart was cautious. Her spirit felt torn between fear and longing. She closed her eyes and whispered to herself, "I need strength and clarity and truth." Her grandmother used to say that when love comes under pressure, it reveals its shape, its cracks, its strength, its depth. Tonight, everything was cracking, and Bianca wasn't sure which pieces were meant to fall away, and which were meant to be rebuilt. Marcus had spent most of the night pacing inside his home office, the blinds half closed, the glow from his computer illuminating his face in uneven flashes. He hadn't told his wife he was working late. He didn't feel the need to. She had gone to bed hours ago without asking questions, slipping beneath the covers with the same detached calm she'd worn all week. But Marcus's mind wasn't calm. Not after the rooftop party. Not after seeing Donald show up and kiss Bianca. Not after watching his wife move through the room with an awareness that didn't feel like simple curiosity. And not after Bianca opened her front door earlier that day with a look in her eyes he had never seen on her, not even back when they were together. Fear wrapped in confusion. Confusion wrapped in hurt. Hurt wrapped in something he couldn't name. Marcus rubbed his forehead and opened another browser tab. He searched the consulting firm his wife once worked for, the one she'd brushed off as a small contract job. He hadn't thought anything of it then. But tonight, something told him to dig deeper. And the deeper he dug, the colder he felt. Articles, old press releases, quiet mentions of corporate sabotage scandals involving high-profile companies, the firm's name appearing again and again in the footnotes, always linked to disputes, acquisitions, or internal betrayals. He leaned back in his chair, breath tight. His wife had brushed off her past job as administrative work. But administrative work didn't put her in rooms with billionaires. It didn't put her next to someone like Donald. And it certainly didn't explain the photo Bianca showed him earlier, the one she didn't intend for Marcus to see, his wife standing close to Donald, long before any of their lives tangled together. Marcus pushed away from the desk and stood abruptly, needing air, needing answers. He moved down the hall and paused outside the bedroom door. The house was quiet, except for the gentle hum of the ceiling fan. He opened the door slowly. His wife sat on the edge of the bed, awake, fully dressed, staring at something in her hand. She turned her head when she heard him enter. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes did, just slightly. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked calmly. Marcus swallowed. "No, you." She slipped something quickly beneath the pillow. "I was thinking." He walked closer. "About what?" Her gaze lingered on him for a long moment before she spoke. "About what happens when past mistakes return." Marcus's pulse jumped. "That's vague," he said carefully. She gave a small, tight smile. "Some things are easier said, vaguely." His jaw clenched. "You've been keeping something from me." "I keep many things from you," she replied softly. "Just as you keep things from me." Marcus felt something cold coil inside him, but he didn't break the stare. "You told Bianca yesterday that someone was asking questions about her. You made it sound like you were trying to help her." "I was." "Why?" Marcus asked. "Why help Bianca? You don't know her." "No," she said quietly. "But I know people like the ones watching her. I know how they target. I know why they choose who they choose." Marcus stepped closer. "And how do you know that? What exactly did you do before you met me?" She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stood from the bed and walked to the window, pulling back the curtain to look outside. "Do you remember when we first started dating?" she asked. Marcus frowned. "Of course. I asked you once if you ever wondered why I moved states, why I changed jobs so abruptly. You said you wanted a fresh start." She nodded. "And that was true. But not for the reasons you thought." Marcus's breath tightened. "Tell me." She turned around slowly. "Someone in the firm I worked for began pushing me to dig deeper into certain clients. One of those clients was tied to Donald. They wanted leverage, influence, something they could use if negotiations ever turned ugly." Marcus's voice sharpened. "Did you do it?" "No," she answered. I didn't want that life. I left before I got pulled too deeply. Marcus stared at her. Then why is that photo of you and Donald out there? A flicker crossed her face. Just a flicker, but enough. I met him once, she admitted. A short, professional interaction. Nothing more. Marcus's breath came hard and uneven. So why is someone sending Bianca that photo now? Her jaw tightened. Because they want her to question him, she whispered. They want instability around him. They want distraction. And she's the closest thing to emotional leverage he has. Marcus felt the room tilt slightly. You're telling me, he said slowly, that whoever is targeting Donald is willing to drag Bianca into this, just to weaken him? Yes. And you knew this? Her silence was the answer. Marcus stepped back, shock cutting through him. Why didn't you warn me? Why didn't you warn her sooner? I did warn her, she said. But not everything. Not yet. Why not everything? Marcus demanded. She looked away, because knowing everything puts her in more danger. Marcus's hands curled into fists. He wasn't an emotional man by nature, steady, measured, always logical. But Bianca was something he could never fully forget, someone he respected, someone he once cared for deeply, even if he didn't show it right. You should have told me, he said. I could have protected her. His wife gave him a long, hollow look. Marcus, she said quietly, there are things in motion you cannot protect her from. Not alone. His whole body stiffened. Are you part of it? He asked. Her eyes widened, a flash of shock, insult, or genuine fear. He couldn't tell. No, she whispered firmly. I left that world. But the people still in it, they don't forget useful faces or useful connections. Marcus felt his stomach twist. I need to talk to Bianca, he said. She deserves to know someone may be targeting her. His wife stepped forward quickly. No, she said, voice sharp for the first time. If you tell her too much, she'll run straight to Donald, and running straight to him is exactly what they want. Marcus stared at her. That single line cracked something inside him. What aren't you saying? He demanded. She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. There are people who want Bianca scared, she whispered. They want Donald desperate, and desperate men make mistakes that shift the balance of power. Marcus felt a chill move down his spine. And you think she's already in danger? Her voice softened. I think the moment they sent that photo, they made her part of the game. Marcus didn't wait another second. He grabbed his keys. His wife didn't stop him this time. Because she knew, whatever was coming next, he wasn't running away from it. He was running toward Bianca to warn her before someone else reached her first. Bianca stood in front of her bedroom mirror, staring at her reflection without truly seeing it. The soft evening dress she wore, a simple, elegant black gown Donald had sent earlier, fit beautifully. But she couldn't feel beautiful in it. Not tonight. Her mind was tangled, heavy, still replaying the photo message in sharp detail. Donald had asked her to attend a charity gala with him. She hadn't agreed instantly. She hadn't disagreed either. She needed air. She needed clarity. She needed to see him in a space where truth couldn't hide behind dim lights and whispered conversations. Her phone buzzed on her dresser. Donald, I'm outside. Bianca inhaled slowly, grabbed her clutch, and walked toward the door with steady steps even though her heart wasn't steady at all. When she stepped outside, she saw Donald standing by the car, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, clean lines, sharp shoulders, the kind of look that belonged in magazines. But what struck her wasn't his appearance. It was his expression. He looked at her like tonight was a test he wasn't sure he would pass. You look... His voice caught. You look incredible. Bianca nodded politely. Thank you. The space between them wasn't hostile. But it wasn't healed either. It was a space of questions waiting for air. He opened the car door for her. She stepped in without a word. During the drive, Donald kept glancing at her, small searching looks he tried to hide. Bianca stared out the window, her thoughts drifting between fear, frustration, curiosity, and something she hated admitting, hope. Hope that he would finally stop protecting her from the truth. Hope that whatever storm was forming wouldn't shatter them beyond repair. The gala venue appeared ahead, an enormous banquet hall framed by marble pillars, floodlit in warm gold. Luxury cars lined the entrance. Guests arrived in gowns and tuxedos that shimmered under the lights. Paparazzi flashes sparked like fireflies along the walkway. Donald parked and stepped around to open her door again. As Bianca took his hand to steady herself, a current passed through them, soft, electric, familiar. She tried not to lean into it. Inside, the gala swelled with conversations, jazz music drifting through the air, servers passing drinks on silver trays. The room shimmered with wealth, polished stone floors, a chandelier that looked like breaking light, and people who carried their status like a second skin. Bianca felt eyes drift toward her and Donald, some curious, some judgmental, some calculating. She lifted her chin slightly. She had grown up attending community events, church functions, block parties where joy wasn't measured by price tags. But tonight's world felt different, formal, guarded, layered with unspoken rules. Donald leaned toward her. "Stay close, please." Bianca didn't respond, but she moved with him through the room. As they approached the main floor, Bianca felt a strange shift in the atmosphere, as if someone was watching her. A prickling sensation traveled up her spine. She scanned the room. Men in tailored suits, women in glittering gowns, clusters of executives, investors, Atlanta's elite. Then she saw her, Marcus's wife, standing near the champagne bar in a deep emerald dress, wearing a smile that didn't belong on a night like this. A smile that stretched too wide, too calm, too deliberate. Bianca's breath thinned. Donald saw her too. Bianca felt his entire body tense beside her. "Don't react," he murmured. But the wife reacted first. She glided across the floor with smooth steps, weaving through guests until she stood directly in front of them. Her expression was warm, wrongly warm. "Bianca," she greeted softly. "Donald." Donald's voice cut sharper than he intended. "Why are you here?" She tilted her head. "It's a charity gala. Everyone who's anyone is here." Her eyes drifted to Bianca, holding her gaze longer than polite. "I'm glad you came," she said. "It must have taken courage after everything." Bianca's chest tightened. "After what?" The wife smiled in a way that felt like a blade wrapped in silk. "You haven't seen it yet?" Before Bianca could ask what she meant, a ripple moved through the room, a wave of murmurs, sudden whispers, shifting eyes. Guests began pulling out their phones. Screens lit up everywhere. A few gasps. Then, a handful of curious looks cast toward Bianca. Donald's jaw clenched. What happened? Bianca's phone vibrated. Once, then twice. She pulled it from her clutch, and her heart sank. A headline had been blasted across every major social media platform. Donald Silverman's secret liaison exposed. Leaked emails suggest former lover influenced corporate decisions. Scroll. Bianca froze. There it was, her name, her photo, from years ago, taken without her knowledge, twisted into a false narrative that made her look like a hidden mistress who manipulated corporate outcomes. The room around her blurred. Heat surged behind her eyes. Her throat tightened. She whispered, "No, no, no." The wife stepped closer, too close. "It's awful what people will believe," she said softly. Even without proof, Bianca's knees weakened. Donald moved instantly. He stepped in front of Bianca, shielding her, looking at the room as if ready to challenge every single person staring. His voice cut through the noise, strong, steady, undeniable. "Everyone here needs to listen." The crowd fell silent. Donald placed a hand over the mic of a passing server, gripping it with steady force, and lifted it. The jazz band faded. Conversations halted. Every eye turned toward him. "Since a story is spreading," Donald said, "let's address it right now." Bianca's heart pounded. His gaze swept the room. Cold fire, sharp clarity. "The woman standing beside me is not a scandal," he said firmly. "She is not a liability. And she is certainly not someone who ever influenced my business decisions." A hush rippled across the ballroom. "She is someone I care about," Donald continued, voice unwavering, "deeply. And if anyone here, or anyone behind these leaks, thinks they can use her name to shake me, you've underestimated both of us." Bianca stared at him, breath trembling. He wasn't performing. He wasn't strategizing. This was raw, unfiltered truth. Donald lowered the mic slowly. Then he turned to her, just her, and said quietly enough for only she could hear, "I will protect you. Not because you're caught in this, because you matter." Her chest tightened painfully. But before she could respond, a sharp sound cut through the air, a glass shattering. Marcus's wife stood a few feet away, her hand trembling as broken glass slid across the floor. Her smile was gone. Her mask was gone. And in its place, Something dark flickered through her eyes. Not anger, not fear, recognition. The kind that meant her plan had failed, and she wasn't done. The ballroom had gone silent except for the soft crackle of broken glass beneath Marcus's wife's heels. Guests stepped back instinctively, creating a widening circle around her as if tension radiated from her body in waves. The chandelier light caught the sharp glint in her eyes that no longer tried to hide anything. Marcus reached her first. "Hey, what's going on with you?" he whispered urgently, wrapping a hand around her arm to steady her. She didn't look at him. She couldn't. Her attention locked on Donald and Bianca, the two people whose presence tonight had peeled away every layer she'd tried so hard to hold in place. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled, not from fear, but from the weight of something she'd carried too long. "It wasn't supposed to go this far," she murmured. Donald stepped forward, position protective yet controlled. "Then stop it now. Whatever this is, end it." A laugh, not amused, not joyful, escaped her lips. "End it? You think I still have control over anything?" Marcus's face tightened. "What does that mean? What did you do?" She lifted her chin, a brittle pride shining through. "You want the truth? Fine. Let's spill it out like the rest of tonight." Bianca braced herself, heart pounding in her chest. Donald moved slightly closer, a silent vow to intercept any threat before it reached her. The wife drew a long breath, eyes flickering between them. Bianca, Donald, and finally Marcus, the man she had married but never truly loved the way he thought. "Years ago," she began, voice low but clear, "I was assigned to observe high-profile executives. Donald was one of them." Donald's shoulders tensed, but he didn't interrupt. "I spent months in and out of meetings, watching how he navigated people, watching how he refused to play dirty, watching how he became impossible for my superiors to manipulate." Bitterness slipped through her tone like a blade. "So yes, I admired him, more than I should have." Bianca felt a sting of something, surprise, discomfort, a soft ache she didn't want to acknowledge. Marcus's expression cracked. "Admired? What are you saying?" She turned to him, her voice gentler. "I married you because I loved the stability you offered, because you were safe, because you weren't connected to that world anymore." Marcus stepped back as if the floor had shifted beneath him. "But Donald," she looked at him again, her expression darkening. "Donald made the mistake of treating me like I was invisible." Donald exhaled slowly. "I didn't know you felt anything. We barely knew each other." "That's exactly the point," she spat. "You didn't see me at all." Bianca swallowed hard. This wasn't the motive she expected, not corporate strategy, not money, something far more personal. The wife continued, voice rising with a fragile kind of fury. "I watched you choose who was worth protecting, who mattered, and when I realized I wasn't one of them, I walked away, I quit, I built a new life." She gestured sharply to her gown, her husband, the glittering room around them. "Or at least I pretended I did." Marcus's voice cut through the heavy air. "So all this, the rumors, the leaks, targeting Bianca, was that revenge?" The wife's jaw clenched. "At first, no, it was survival. My old firm came knocking again. They wanted intel, access, someone close enough to Atlanta's elite to get information without drawing attention." Bianca's breath caught. "And you gave it to them?" "No," she said firmly. "I refused. I walked away again. I didn't want that world anymore, but they didn't stop asking." A tremor ran through her hand. "Then I heard Donald was in trouble. I heard someone was using an old story about him and a former girlfriend to build a case, and I panicked. I thought, maybe if the narrative shifted." "You dragged Bianca into it," Donald said sharply. The wife's eyes glistened, a crack finally showing. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I meant to hurt you." Bianca's heart twisted painfully. Marcus couldn't look at her. His jaw flexed, eyes fixed on the floor, as if replaying every conversation they'd ever had. "I don't understand," he whispered. "Why sabotage Donald? Why us?" She turned to him, tears threatening to spill. "Because I hated how someone like him could dismiss me without noticing. And I hated that you—" her voice broke, "that you loved me without seeing what I was carrying. I was drowning between the two worlds, Marcus. I didn't know where I belonged." "This isn't belonging," he said quietly, heartbreak lacing his tone. "This is destruction." The wife's tears finally fell. Destruction feels easier than emptiness. Silence fell over the circle of onlookers. A few gasped. Others turned away. But Bianca stood rooted in place, feeling the weight of a woman broken in ways that had nothing to do with her and everything to do with a world that expected perfection, loyalty, and secrecy all at once. The wife continued, voice trembling. When I saw Donald kiss you at the party, Bianca, I realized I had been replaced in a story I wasn't even supposed to be part of. And the worst part, she looked directly at Bianca. You didn't even know you were stepping into a war. Donald stepped forward, voice sharp but controlled. This ends now. You will tell the board, the firm, and whoever else is behind this that Bianca is off limits. You will tell them the truth. And what is the truth, Donald? She asked bitterly. That she's the woman you protected before you even knew she needed protection? That she's the one they'll use to break you if given the chance? That I won't let them, he said. Bianca's breath tightened at the conviction in his voice. You don't get to decide how this ends, the wife whispered. They've already moved. Marcus stepped forward suddenly, emotion cracking through him. You used me, our marriage, our home, everything. Her face twisted with pain. No, I loved you. I still do. But love didn't erase what I lived through before you. Marcus shook his head slowly. You needed help, not a path of secrets. The wife finally broke, her shoulders shaking, tears streaming. For the first time, she looked small. Human. Fragile. Bianca looked at Donald. Donald looked at her. In that moment, Bianca saw the truth she had been avoiding. He had been loyal to her, even when he was wrong. He had protected her, even when she didn't ask. He had feared for her, even when it meant carrying guilt alone. And now, he was willing to stand in front of a room full of powerful people. For her. The wife crumbled into Marcus's arms, sobbing against the weight of her own confession. Security approached gently, guests whispered, tension loosened, but Bianca stood frozen in the eye of the storm. Donald turned to her slowly. Bianca, he whispered, I'm sorry, for everything I kept from you, for every fear I put in your heart, but nothing about how I feel for you has ever been a lie. Her chest tightened, her trust wavered, but her heart hurt him. The ballroom slowly drifted back into motion, conversations rising like scattered embers after a fire. Guests whispered among themselves. Security escorted Marcus's wife gently toward a quieter room, and the string ensemble resumed softly in the background to calm the atmosphere. But Bianca stood completely still. Her mind wasn't in the ballroom. It wasn't in the music. It wasn't in the whispers around her. It was in her chest, where her heartbeat felt uneven, almost fragile, carrying the weight of too many truths arriving too quickly. Donald stood in front of her, watching her carefully, giving her space but refusing to step away. His eyes held the same softness she remembered from their early days together, the gentleness that made her fall for him before she understood exactly how dangerous loving him could be. Bianca, he said quietly. Please, talk to me. She lifted her gaze, meeting his eyes for the first time since the chaos unfolded. What she saw there wasn't pride, or fear, or defensiveness. It was a man stripped down to truth. But truth still needed explanation. Do you realize, she began softly, that every time I think I understand what's happening, something new hits me harder than the last? He nodded slowly. I know, and I'm sorry. Sorry can't be your shield, she whispered. Not tonight. Donald swallowed, lowering his head slightly in acknowledgement. You're right, it can't. I'm not trying to hide behind it. I just haven't been fair to you. Bianca exhaled through her nose, grounding herself before she spoke again. My grandmother used to say, she murmured, that when someone walks into your life with truth, you'll feel it before they say a word. And when someone walks in with secrets, you'll feel that too. She paused. Donald, for weeks now, I've felt the weight of secrets. Your secrets. His throat tightened. I should have told you everything the moment I came back. Yes, she said. You should have. Donald's eyes glistened, not with tears, but with the sharp ache of regret. But, she continued, I also know you weren't lying when you said you were trying to protect me. I felt that too. A breath he'd been holding escaped him. Bianca looked toward the side room where Marcus's wife had been taken. She admitted she sabotaged you because you rejected her. That part wasn't your fault. No, he said. But I should have told you I knew her from years ago. Bianca nodded. You should have, not because of jealousy, not because of history, but because honesty is the foundation we were supposed to build on. He stepped closer, not touching her, not assuming, just closing enough distance for truth to move without interruption. I know you're hurt, he whispered. "And I know I made mistakes that put you in danger and in pain, Bianca. I'll spend as long as I have to proving that I won't ever do that again." Silence filled the space between them, but not an empty silence. A silence thick with possibility. Bianca looked at him fully now, not with anger, not with fear, with clarity. "Tell me the line," she said quietly. Donald blinked. "What line?" "The line you whispered to me the night of the party," she said. "The night you kissed me in front of everyone, the one I wasn't allowed to hear." Recognition washed over his face like a tide. He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, his expression softening, his voice dropping to something intimate. "I said," he murmured, "I've been waiting to come back to you." Bianca's breath caught. Donald continued, voice trembling slightly. "I wasn't talking about strategy, or business, or protection. I meant it literally. Every day since we ended, I've thought about what I lost, and what I threw away when I let you walk out without fighting for you." Bianca's eyes warmed, a sting rising behind them. "Then why didn't you come back sooner?" she asked. His voice cracked. "Because I didn't feel worthy of you yet." Bianca's heart twisted, painfully and beautifully at once. Donald laughed softly, not joyful, but raw. "I've built empires easier than I've faced my own mistakes. I thought I needed to fix my world before I could be part of yours again. And the longer I waited, the more afraid I became that you wouldn't want me back." Bianca looked down, her breath shaky. "I don't need perfection. I never did. I just needed honesty. I'm giving you all of it now," he said. "Every truth, every flaw, every fear. Whatever questions you have, I'll answer. Whatever doubts you have, I'll confront them with you." Bianca lifted her eyes again, tears shimmering but refusing to fall. "Here's what I need," she said softly. "I need to know that if I choose you, I'm not choosing pain disguised as protection. I can't live like that. I won't." "You won't," he said immediately. "I'll stand in front of every storm before it touches you, but I'll never again stand between you and the truth." There was sincerity in his voice, thick, full, steady. Bianca's heart shifted gently, like something wounded finally exhaling. "And," she added, "I need communication, real communication, Donald. No more assuming what I can or can't handle. No more hiding things because you think it's for my own good." He nodded slowly, deeply. "You have my word." Her voice trembled. "Then tell me something else, something you've held back, not because of danger, but because of fear." Donald hesitated only a moment. Then he said it. "I never stopped loving you." Bianca's breath broke out of her. It was a confession years overdue, spoken with a sincerity that melted everything rigid inside her. Fear, doubt, hesitation. Donald stepped just slightly closer, giving her every chance to pull away. "But I'll only ask for your love again if you want to freely give it. You're not here to ease my wounds or undo my guilt. You're here because I'm willing to do the work." Bianca stared at him, really stared, through the polished suit, through the power, through the mistakes and the regrets. She looked at the man beneath all of it, and for the first time since the chaos began, her heart felt steady. "Donald," she whispered, "I'm tired of running from what scares me, and I'm tired of being treated like I need protecting from the truth, instead of being trusted with it." He nodded slowly. "So, what do you choose now?" Bianca inhaled deeply, feeling every moment of her journey, community strength, heartbreak, resilience, love, and confusion, rise inside her like a quiet anthem. "I choose honesty," she said. "I choose communication." She stepped closer. "And if you're willing to do the work, I choose a chance, with you." A soft, relieved breath escaped him. He didn't touch her. She closed the distance for the first time, her hand finding his. And the way he held it told her everything she needed to know. Bianca and Donald left the gala hand in hand, stepping into the cooler night air as the chaos of the ballroom faded behind them. The valet line was filled with murmuring guests and flashing cameras, but for the first time in days, Bianca didn't feel the world closing in on her. Her heart still beat fast, yes. Her trust still needed rebuilding, absolutely. But her spirit felt steady. Donald glanced at her while they waited for the car. "If you want silence, I'll give silence. If you want to talk, I'll talk. Just tell me what feels right." Bianca looked up at him, surprised by the gentleness in his tone. "Right now," she said softly, "I just want to go somewhere quiet." He nodded immediately. When the valet pulled up, Donald opened the door for her with none of the dramatic flair he once used around cameras. No showmanship, no polished billionaire posture, only sincerity. Only tenderness. Only a man trying his hardest to do better. They drove without music. The city lights painted long streaks across the windshield, softening the edges of their silence. Donald didn't grip the wheel like he usually did. He drove slowly, as if giving Bianca time to breathe, to settle her thoughts, to decide what came next. Halfway through the ride, Bianca turned toward him. "Where are we going?" Donald hesitated, then offered a small, almost shy smile. "Somewhere not expensive. Somewhere that reminds me of you, not the world I come from." Her chest warmed a little at that. He pulled into a small lot behind an old wood-paneled community center on the south side of the city. The paint was chipped, the lights dim, the street quiet except for a few parked cars. Bianca blinked. "This place," she murmured. "I haven't been here in years." Donald shut off the engine and looked at her gently. "You told me once this was where you learned your first line dance, where your family used to host reunions, where you said you felt most yourself." Bianca felt her breath catch. "You remembered that?" "I've remembered everything," he said. He stepped out of the car and came around to open her door. No rush, no assumption, just soft intention. Bianca stepped out slowly, her heels clicking lightly against the pavement. The old community building felt like a memory pressed into wood, warmth, celebration, culture, and connection all wrapped into one space. It wasn't luxury. It wasn't wealth. It wasn't power. It was home in a way money could never imitate. Donald pushed open the side door, and Bianca followed him inside. The room was dim but clean, chairs stacked neatly, fairy lights strung loosely across the ceiling, leftover decor from whatever event happened last weekend. A faint scent of barbecue still lingered in the walls. Bianca stepped forward, emotion rising in her chest. Why bring me here?" Donald moved beside her. "Because I brought you into my world too many times," he said. "Tonight, I needed to show you I'm willing to step into yours." She turned to face him fully. No one else was in the room. No distractions. No elite audience. No whispers. No cameras. Just the two of them. Donald rubbed his hands together, suddenly nervous. "I don't know how to fix everything perfectly, and I can't change the way my world treats people who aren't born into it. But I can change the way I move inside it. I can choose honesty. I can choose communication. I can choose you." Bianca's throat tightened. "And," he added softly, "I can learn. I can listen. I can build a life that reflects both of us, not just one of us." Bianca took a step closer. "You're saying all the right things, but words need actions." "I know," he said. "That's why I brought you here." He walked toward a small stereo sitting on a table near the wall, something old enough that it still had a CD slot. Donald pressed a button, and the speakers hummed to life. Bianca recognized the song instantly. A slow, smooth R&B classic. A song played at weddings, cookouts, family reunions, the soundtrack of black community gatherings she'd grown up with. Her breath softened. "You remembered this too?" "I remember everything that made you smile," he said gently. He held out his hand. "Bianca, may I?" It wasn't a grand gesture. It wasn't diamonds or luxury or spectacle. It was a quiet, grounded offering. A man asking a woman to dance in a room that reminded her of her roots. Bianca placed her hand in his. The warmth of his palm felt like stepping into sunlight after days of gray. He pulled her close, not tight, not controlling, just enough for her to rest her head against his chest. They swayed slowly, the rhythm soft and steady. Donald's breath brushed against her hair, calm, tender, almost reverent. For the first time in a long time, Bianca felt safe. Not because danger was gone, not because everything was fixed, but because he was trying, truly trying, to meet her where she was. Midway through the song, Donald whispered, "Bianca, thank you for giving us a chance." She lifted her head slightly. "Thank you for earning it." He leaned his forehead against hers, voice soft as a promise. "No more secrets. No more silence," she added. "No more running," he whispered. Bianca smiled faintly. "From either of us." They danced until the song faded, then stood there quietly, holding each other as the room settled around them. When they finally pulled back, Bianca noticed how different he looked, not like the billionaire who walked into the rooftop party with command and presence, but like the man she met years ago at a festival, shyly bumping into her, trying to learn joy. He was hers, not because of wealth, not because of power, but because his heart had finally learned truth. Bianca walked toward the center of the room, taking a full breath. The journey had been heavy, filled with confusion, fear, betrayal, love, truth, and vulnerability. But as she stood there, she felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. A peace earned through honesty. A peace built through communication. A peace born from choosing not to run from love just because it once hurt. She turned toward Donald, who watched her with quiet admiration. "I'm not perfect," she said softly, "and neither are you. But maybe we're perfect for the work we're willing to do." His eyes softened. "Then let's do the work. Together." She nodded. Together. They stepped outside into the night, the air warm against their skin, a sense of beginning unfolding between them. Bianca felt lighter, like the fear she'd carried had loosened its grip, making space for hope to bloom again. And as they walked toward the car, hand in hand, Bianca whispered a truth to herself. Healing didn't mean forgetting the pain. It meant believing in the possibility of something better. Share this story with someone who needs to remember that healing is possible.